All right, looky here. We're back for another episode of what would you say? Always on the grow. I've got a legend right here. I guess you could say across from me or side to side now with this whole Zoom thing, but a gentleman that's almost accomplished everything across the board and continues to make a dynamic impact. Has a new book out, and I got to tell you, in terms of disruption and innovation, there's probably no better man on behalf of those two topics on this planet that can speak to that. Mr. J. Samit is in the house with me today. So excited to have you, my man. I appreciate you for reaching back to me and say, hey, let's do this.
The honor's all mine. Thrilled to be here.
Cool. So, doing some homework and kind of, first of all, how do you spell dyslexic? Because I know I caught you in there one time saying that you're dyslexic, by the way, you and I both. So,
and you're going to give me a spelling test? It's DY and figure out the rest.
I see. For a long time, I thought it was DSY. I was like, what? That can't be right. So we share some synergy there. But no, in all seriousness, look, a million questions, right? And I think what you've recently just put together with your latest book, obviously your original book, Disrupt You. For you, the concept of entrepreneurship and building business and making a thread go through everything where you start off at one point and then you end up at this point. What is the thread out of the gate that you think enables entrepreneurs or human beings to continue to find that next level of success like you've done in so many different domains and keeps them along that path consistently enough to keep driving that purpose or that initiative or that mission forward? What is that to you?
Well, you hit a key word, which is purpose. And I believe the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. This book is about answering that question. I wrote Future-Proofing You to really take everything that I've learned down to 12 key truths. If you follow these truths, you'll grow and be successful. The first one you already know, it's obvious, and that's you have to have a growth mindset. So if you start with that mindset, then you suddenly realize that obstacles are just opportunities in disguise, and you move from there. Disrupt You, probably the most enjoyable experience in my life. Yes, I've run billion-dollar companies, and I've created companies and sold companies and all that. But I wrote it to pay forward and to help people change their lives. And the journey has been something I never expected. It's now out in 12 languages. It comes out in Urdu, Icelandic, and Polish this year. And I get what I call love letters from readers all over the world of how Disrupt You's changed them. And I don't do anything. I just hold a mirror up to their soul and let them do the change themselves. But occasionally, usually from a millennial, Gen Xer, I get, this is all motivational, but I could never do this. And that bugged the crap out of me. How am I not reaching that person? I grew up working class, dyslexic, as we talked about. And one day you have dozens of friends that are self-made billionaires. How does that happen? How is there a new self-made billionaire every 48 hours? What are they doing differently? So in Future-Proofing You, product placement, I took a kid who grew up on welfare, who's basically homeless, couch surfing at friends' places, and I mentored him one day a week for a year. I gave him no money, no business contacts, didn't tell him what business to start. He had to start something that took no capital. And he went from welfare to self-made millionaire in 11 months. Anyone can do this. It wasn't easy. He worked hard, but he worked harder than most people are willing to in order to live in a manner that most people can't. So he put his life on hold for a year to just grind.
Sure. So I love that. And I think the story proofing of bringing it through, right? The future proof with the story proof of how you wrote the book is amazing. But you said something so integral right there, which was the working hard piece, right? That could be the de facto thing that says, okay, there's that gap that happens between anybody can do this. You give them the story, you give them the book, you give them the resource, but they don't want to initiate to a point where they develop that work hard piece. So what is the resolution for that?
So the key is, in my mind, you only need two things to be successful in life: insight and perseverance. In Disrupt You, I taught people how to find insight, how to find those opportunities, how to find, the nuggets that are out there that no one's bothering to pick up. The perseverance, I really drilled down in Future-Proofing You that if you can take that perseverance and transform it into passion. That what you're doing is passion. The passion will cover you through the rough spots. It'll move you forward. My passion was really simple when I started. It was early 20s. I got out of college. The world was supposed to like open a door and live happily ever after. And there were no jobs. I'm like, fuck, right? I remember that. I mean, you look at me and I'm an old dude, but I remember that viscerally because I also had 2 sons when I was very young. Wow. And I looked down at their faces. So my passion was, I want them to have a better life and I will do whatever it takes. And, you know, when the guy came to repossess my car, when I ran my first business, I didn't know how to raise money back then. I've raised hundreds of millions for startups. I did on my credit cards, the worst thing you can possibly do. When the guy came to repossess my car, I was literally holding a Cub Scout meeting at the house with my sons and their friends. And I'm like, dude, do I look like a flight risk? Have some compassion. And he did, right? And the biggest other change that I think will help you get through that I didn't cover in Disrupt You, it was so obvious this time around. One of the truths is don't fly solo. You will need a series of mentors. No one got there on their own. And I used to be part of that mythology. I ran rock labels. I ran the biggest music companies in the world. And the mythology was when you see that person up on the stage singing from their heart to yours, it's one, he's there all by himself, he did it, yeah. And you don't see the songwriters and the producers, the musicians and the agents and the roadies and the managers and the stylist who makes the wrinkled t-shirt look wrinkled. There is no such thing as a self-made man or woman. I mean, even Sir Isaac Newton, who was considered the greatest scientist of all time, said the only reason he's achieved what he did is he's standing on the shoulders of giants. So why wouldn't you? And I show you how to use LinkedIn as a tool to find the mentors you want. You don't send an email to some stranger, hey, will you be my mentor? I get millions of those. That's like walking up to a bar and say, hey, will you have my baby? It just doesn't work, okay?
Right.
But if you can identify the kind of people by their backgrounds, by what they post, and you can start a dialogue, you can have a lifelong mentor without ever using the M word.
Right.
Mother Teresa found her mentor on a bus bench. You know, everybody has them. Oprah Winfrey had them. So don't try to think that the world's against you. And so that's one of the other topics that future-proofing you is I have to reteach people business math 101.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it that they're doing something wrong. They were taught wrong. School was to create employees, you know, conform, follow the path. And so in school, they would say, Manny, if I buy a banana for $1 and I sell it to you for $2, that's how you make money in business. I take money from you. Well, in game theory, that's called a zero-sum game. It's like a poker table. You can only make as much as there. So if somebody else gets money, they're competing with me. If somebody else is successful, I hate them. If somebody else is taking jobs in other country robots, the whole world's against you. That's not how you create wealth. Okay? You create wealth by saying, okay, if I start a company and I sell you 10% for 10,000, what do I now have? I have 10,000 in cash and 90,000 in stock. I can hire people with that. I can buy things with that. I can trade things. That's how Jeff Bezos could lose money year after year after year after year for over a decade with Amazon and come out the other end of that money losing exercise as the richest man in the world.
Right.
The majority of billionaires didn't get there by slowly investing. Warren Buffett, genius investor, taking nothing away from the man. He's got $80 billion. But 99% of that he got after 50. Now being older than 50, I will tell you, you could have a lot more fun with it when you're younger. So if you look at Kylie Jenner, she became a billionaire at 22.
Right.
And people always go, yeah, but she's in the Kardashian family. Yeah, there's no billionaires in the Kardashians. So what did she do different? Can you repeat these steps? Can you find the same insights?
Sure.
And that's why I wanted to take somebody that anyone could relate to and say, okay, I'm at least starting at the same starting point as he is. How did he follow these truths one by one and get there?
Yeah. That's wonderfully said. And I appreciate that knowledge value share right there. A couple things that stood out. What can we do different was the first question. Second thing was reteaching. And then you said something else, which was the greatest of all time. So recently I've been studying a lot of Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady. I'm all about learning his methods and his styles and what makes him click. And not long before this, my beautiful lady and I were having a conversation about childhood and the effect that your upbringing has in those early ages, right? And so when I start to learn about you and I start studying your work and this massive list of accomplishments, I'm thinking to myself, something I'm not sure of in detail yet that I hope that you would be willing to share with us here is like, what was that life like for you coming up? Did you have entrepreneur parents? Did they breed that into you when you were a kid? Because, and the reason I'm saying this, Jay, is because if I go back, for example, Tom Brady had a very loving and kind family. Dad was an entrepreneur, go-getter, forced competitiveness onto them. He was the fourth child before three superstar girls, right? And so he was the last kid. He had to fight. So he had that kind of in him from day one, where we know his talent's not the best. He just had the biggest fire, the biggest desire and competitiveness to go out there and become that guy. So in business, it's kind of different because there's really no Super Bowl, right? There's no championship in high school. There's something to work for in that same sense. So with you, I'm wondering what that original starting point was, because you said we could all have the same starting point and come up from that. So could you bring some context to that for us?
So one of the things that I talk about in Future Proofing You is you have to discover what your superpower is. We all have something that makes us unique. Mm-hmm. And if we can lean into that, we'll get further in business. And mine was being dyslexic.
Right.
You know, the teachers thought that I'm stupid, this, that, or other stuff. But when there's a group assignment, my hand was up first to be in charge. So you do the writing part and you do the reading part. And I learned how to delegate. Well, that's running a business, okay? Mm-hmm. You learn how to overcompensate. Most of us were drilled into by our parents and teachers and well-wishers not to try things because those people had given up on their dreams due to the pain.
Right.
And they want to prevent you from pain and failing. Well, failing is part of life. No baby wakes up. Tom Brady didn't wake up one day at 1 year old and go, today I'm going to walk across the room, watch me, or run. No, you try a couple steps, you fall down, you try. When you play a video game, you don't sit down there and 3 hours later you get to the end. You hit some insane obstacle and you hammer until you find a way past it. That's all business is. Most of your successful people that you know, their first businesses were failures. Bill Gates' first business went belly up. Walt Disney's first business went belly up. Henry Ford, I could go on and on and on. And as an investor, and you can talk to any VC, you'd rather invest in somebody whose first business has already failed. Because they've learned when you fail, you don't end up where you start. You either earn or you learn. But either way, you're further along the path.
Interesting.
And so for me, that dyslexia made me always try to find a solution that wasn't linear. That turns out to be my my superpower. I wish just once in my career, you know, when Sony had their best year, they called me in. When McDonald's had their worst year, they called me in. When McDonald's had their worst year, you know, they called me in. Everybody calls me in when they're in trouble. Just once, I'd like to have somebody go, we're having our best year. I wonder if Jay could make it better. But no, my superpower is seeing these other solutions. So when there were no jobs and I was just starting out, I just seen a movie that had changed my life. I'm a young guy getting out of school and Star Wars came out. I'm like, oh my God, I want to make Hollywood special effects. But three problems. I don't know anybody in Hollywood. I know nothing about special effects and I really know nothing about computers. Other than that, that's my plan. So what I was lucky enough to have instinct is that the way to solve a problem is to get information. The more data you have, the better you get. So pre-internet, I ran an ad in the Hollywood Reporter describing the entry-level job that I would want. To get two pieces of data. One, I got a ton of resumes in that showed me what would I need on my resume to get a job at one of these places. And two, here's a stack of people with 1 foot out the door. I now know a whole bunch of companies that are going to be hiring. So you can connect that.
Right.
The modern version, which I wrote about in Disruptive, is a guy got out of college and he wanted to go into advertising. He wanted to be a madman. He wanted to be creative. Oh my God. And he actually landed a job at one of the big 5 giant ad agencies. And he's stuck like in the basement in a cubicle moving numbers around with some dead entry level wants to shoot himself type job. And he's Googling around and he realizes the big 5 famous creative directors, no one has bought their names as keywords. So for $9 on Google, he buys their name. So whenever they Google themselves, it says, hey, I'd want to work for you. Click for a link to his portfolio. 3 of the 5 bring him in, offer him a job. He makes 4 or 5 times his salary and accelerates his career by 15 years. Mm-hmm. So there's always a solution.
Right. I think when you as you unfold many more nuggets of wisdom, because I truly believe it's wisdom. There's experience in there, which you can't deny the fact that life, growing into that, it's a beautiful thing, which is why it goes back to that mentorship piece. When I hear you speak of these ideas, I can't help but think about, how to think, and that's a skill in and of itself. It's not what to think, right? Because we all know what to think, what to do. We were told that all day long, every day. But using those mental faculties where we can actually constructively create and I think develop those insights, allow some of us to move forward. So for some of us out there that are non-thinkers or unrelated
Everybody's
to critical thinking.
Thinker.
Okay, good.
Let me teach you how to find insights. I can guarantee you that 30 days from now, you will have more deal flow than the biggest venture capital firm of ideas that should be implemented. And here's what you do. It's very simple. I call 3 problems a day for 30 days. Today, not tomorrow, write down 3 problems in your life. I'll give you one: traffic, okay? Right? And what happens is after day 2 or 3, you kind of tap out. You go, I don't have any more problems. No, you have problems, but you live so much of your life on autopilot, you don't think through the problem moment by moment. So I had a reader that wrote me, they were doing this exercise, and one morning they're taking their medicine and the phone rings. Mm-hmm. Get off the phone. Did I take my pill? If I did, I take another one, I OD. If I don't get better. Oh, I got another problem. So he germinated on that, and he ended up taking a Happy Meal watch, put it on a pill bottle. Every time you open it, it sets it back to 0. So you can look at the bottom and say, oh, hasn't been open for 8 hours. I didn't take it. Oh, 3 minutes. Yes. Then he put Bluetooth on it, so you know whether grandma took her medicine. Got these in CVS and stores all over the world. So it's just solving a problem. And future-proofing you, I have one from a mom that was just so simple that if you weren't doing this exercise, it wouldn't have come. Every parent can relate to this. It's a school night. It's the middle of the week. It's late at night. Your kid has a project due the next day. They're writing on poster board their big thing, and they screw it up. And they're crying, go to the store, get me another piece of poster board, please, 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 mommy, please. So she runs out to the store, and she's not going and doing this again. So before she gives the paper to her kid, she just makes little lines on it, very fine lines, so the kid can do his lettering nice and straight. The next morning, she calls her sister-in-law and goes, why don't they sell poster board like that? Make a long story short, she gets a patent. She makes about $5 million. No employees, no work, no nothing.
And that was it, solving a problem.
That's it, just solving a problem. Entrepreneurs don't sell things, they solve problems.
But selling something. Go ahead.
But nobody ever woke up and said, what I really want is a 3/4 inch drill bit. What they wanted was the 3/4 inch hole.
Right.
They had to buy the drill bit. So if you can solve problems for a few people, you're popular. Solve for 1 million, you make a lot of money. When you solve for 1 billion people, you change history. And we're all one click away from 7 billion people. Isn't your purpose in life to make this world better than you found it? It doesn't have to be some giant problem like, world hunger. It could be the simplest thing, traffic. 2 guys were in traffic in Tel Aviv, and it dawned on them, the phone company knows where my phone is. They tell me to go left, you to go right. That was Waze.
Sure.
And you don't have to be an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I've done nothing but tech my whole life. Steve Jobs built the first trillion-dollar company, can't read or write a line of code. Remember, insight and perseverance, you can hire everything else. So how did I start in special effects? Couldn't get a job. So what I did was I printed up business cards, made a made-up company. My name is J. Allen Samit, so it was Jasmine, named it after me, but it was hidden in there. But I knew nobody would go to an effects company run by a 22-year-old. So I just made myself head of sales. I didn't make myself CEO or president. Went out and hustled, and I got work. You could hire Lucas back then for gazillions of dollars, but there's a lot of low-budget people that can't afford ILM.
Right.
So I got some gigs. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I could hire the people that just want a job.
Interesting. Interesting. So, like I'm thinking in terms of resources to be able to do that, which is great. You know, what we say, solving a problem, entrepreneur finds problem opportunity, solution direction. Then we talk about implementation and execution, right? I mean, that's a wide gap in it of itself, which insight, important, perseverance, obviously through that entire thing, you're figuring that piece out. But talk to me about sort of the execution elements,
Sure.
right? The raw
So,
materials that have to go into that.
so the acronym I use is MOVE, M-O-V-E. First is mindset. You have to have that growth mindset. You have to believe that you can and do it. Number two is obstacles. You have to find an obstacle. Very easy to do, okay? The next one is void, and it's one of the 12 truths. I'm competitive, okay? I've had success. But I'll tell you this, I hate competition.
Interesting.
On any day, there is somebody smarter, better funded, better looking, better connected, better. There's always somebody better.
Right.
But if I go fill a void, if I'm doing something nobody else is doing, by definition, I'm the only one in the world doing it. That makes me the best in the world. So this young man that I mentored, he thought that he knew about social media because, like everybody, he grew up with it. And he wanted people to hire him to do their social media. Well, when you're one guy with no track record or whatever, you're not suddenly going to get Ford Motor or AT&T to hire you. And the only people he knew were other people that didn't have any money. And so, maybe you could get $100 here or there. So I said, okay, that's your skill set. Find a void. Look in the news. Look online. What's the zeitgeist? What are people talking about? What's a new field? And then stake your flag that you are the best social media person at that field, because it's the same skills. Now you have no competition. So he got his first client. He killed it for that client. He would have done that client for free, but now you have what in MBA speak is a case study.
Mm-hmm.
So the same people that were paying him $200 a month to do social media, we're now paying him $30,000 a month. And now he gets giant clients. And now he's future-proof.
Right.
I mean, he worked his butt off that year. He didn't go to movies, didn't date, didn't do anything. And the last month, his eyes were just set on, I'm taking a year off and traveling the world and doing. And he could do that, not just because he had made a lot of money, but because he knew whenever he wanted to start again, he had the skills, no matter what the economy, no matter what pandemic, to be successful.
Yeah. And I like how, our original exchange had that in there with right now, tons of shift, tons of adjustments worldwide. And I read something and listened to something you were talking about, the future of where we're headed. It's going to just completely upend what currently is in existence. And it's kind of happening as we're seeing it right now, which means job loss, which means pivoting, which means mental adjustments.
Half of all jobs in the US will disappear over the next 5 years. Let that sink in for a second.
Right.
Now, disruption is guaranteed. I spent 5 years telling people that. I don't have to make that point so much anymore. The pandemic kind of convinced people, yeah, there's disruption. But disruption isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. The 150 wealthiest people in the US doubled their net wealth in 2020. Not what they make in a year, doubled their entire wealth. The bottom 140 million people collectively own less than 1%.
Wow.
So when you looked at what happened in our nation's capital, I'm not talking politics, what I saw was thousands and thousands of people feeling left behind, left out, fighting for leftovers. The skills that they were taught in school, the rules that they taught how society worked, doesn't exist today. 1950s, which is before I was around, the average worker, the average family had one parent working, and the average house was equivalent to 2 years' wages. So that one person could work, raise their family, have a nice house, send the kids to school, and retire to a full pension. That world's gone.
Yeah.
Social Security goes bankrupt in less than a decade. So unless you take control of yourself, if you're broke, it's not your fault. If you stay broke, it's your fault.
Yeah.
And the majority of Americans don't have $1,000 set aside for an emergency. So why do I write this? Why do I spend my time traveling and doing this? It's not making money. I'm not trying to monetize. I don't sell master classes or seminar. I can't even get a freaking t-shirt with my face on it. I love living in a democracy. And a democracy only exists if you have a strong middle class. The middle class got eviscerated in this pandemic. So unless we can teach people how to create jobs, which is what entrepreneurs do, life as we know it's going to change, and it's not going to look good. I've been to most of the world, and I can tell you what countries that don't have a middle class look like. It's very good for the people at the top, and it really sucks for everybody else.
Sure. Makes all the sense in the world. Did you get to the E, by the way? You said move, M-O-V.
Oh,
was it just M-O?
No, it's M-O-V-E. So mindset, obstacle, void, and execution.
Got it. So the execution is the final pillar.
Yeah. So, you got to do the heavy lifting. You got to do the work. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from those mistakes. You're going to pivot from those mistakes. And there's no other complexity to it.
Right.
Now, there's new opportunities. In the book, one of the truths is a new $1 trillion opportunity. If I could convince you in the next 2 minutes that there's a $1 trillion opportunity and no one has a head start on it, would you want it?
I get my ears are wide open. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, the iPhone comes out. You can't live without your smartphone. It's the first thing you see in the morning, Manny. You kiss it goodnight. It's by your side. I mean, it's the most intimate part of your life. You run your business. Agreed?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
But when it came out, Apple spending the billions of dollars to create this new infrastructure. Let me tell you 2 of the top 10 apps the first year. The Fart app and a cat app, playing with cat game.
Right.
Which is another way of saying nobody saw all the businesses that you could build in the app world. Wow. The Robin Hoods, the Open Tables, the simple things, right? Well, starting this Christmas in the next 2 years, you're not going to be taking your phone out of your pocket anymore. Phone's going away. You'll still have it on you, but it's all going to be heads-up display and glasses. So I will be able to get data here. I'll be doing my searching here. They'll know where I am. 5G edge computing will bring information. So there'll be a graphic overlay. If Google doesn't own what you're seeing, Google goes out of business. If Apple doesn't sell you these, they go out of business. Facebook. So this is an existential threat. The big guys are spending tens of billions of dollars. Google, Facebook, Apple, all my clients, okay? Now, what they're not doing is building those little apps. They're not solving the problem. So if you know somebody's spending all the money and people are going to have it, and the first, eye roll that I get from people is, oh, I'd never wear those. Really? Last year, 2020, 80 million pairs of glasses were sold that came with one app, Focus. If you want to read, you put on glasses.
Right.
Another 50 million were sold that came with another app called Sun. Oh my God, I'm at the beach. I'm going to wear sunglasses. So if suddenly you can get glasses that translate any menu into whatever language you want, or translate into your ear whatever anybody's saying, or on and on and on. Where did I park my car? There's a line to take me. But augmentation is also about taking stuff out of the environment. So if the doctor said to you, you have diabetes, you can't eat things with sugar, and you walk in the supermarket, 40,000 products, show me the products with no sugar. Everything else disappears. Or I'm going to be on the keto diet. Show me the things that are keto, or halal, or kosher, or vegan, or whatever it is. Or I just want to see French wines, or what's the wine that I had last week over at such and such a restaurant, right? Everything will just happen. So sales changes, marketing changes. The big guys are focused on moving their businesses here. They will promote your app. They'll make you super successful. When the iPad came out, prior to that, nobody ever swiped, right? For those of you that your dating life is like this, it's hard to believe.
Right.
So Apple had to teach people how to swipe. It sounds crazy, but you have to show them something, swiping. So they would look for something in their original TV commercials to do, and they wanted to find a game that was swiping. So there was a nearly out of business Northern European little game company that had 30 failures in a row. And they made a game called Angry Birds that had swiping. So Apple put that in all their commercials, $100 million worth of media. Guess what became the best-selling game? Angry Birds. Guess what sold $5 billion worth of bed sheets, lunchboxes, t-shirts, and sodas? Angry Birds. So if you start out and you have those apps now, Facebook's going to want to promote it, or Google's going to, everybody's going to want to show that there's stuff using their system.
Yeah.
And that's how I did when I made video games back in the beginning. There was a company that didn't have an audience, I'd make a game for them.
Solving a problem.
And they'll advertise my stuff. And I'm using OPM, other people's money, to build my brand.
That was an inherited thing for you, or was that on the streets that you developed that skill, or that you just went from?
When you don't have money, you learn how to do things without money.
Got it.
So years and years of being that, make a nickel look like a dollar, gave me a different approach to marketing. Even when I was running giant multinationals like Sony or whatever, and I'm looking to hire, VPs of marketing somewhere in the organization, I don't want somebody that used to be, for some big telco or Coca-Cola, right? 100-year-old brand, and they get spent $5 billion a year.
Right.
Right. A monkey with the dartboard could do equally well. Okay. I want somebody that took nothing. So Vin, when I was interviewing Vin, he told me a great story of basic social media marketing, the way he was thinking. He's from London, tough part of town. And there was a new bar opening, a pub. So to put it in perspective, London's the capital city. Media is super, super expensive. So you really can't afford to advertise. Rents are super expensive. There's a million other pubs. So if you don't kick it right off the gate and have a lot of customers, you close your doors. So he got hired to do a promotion in social media for it. And he realized that he had to do something different. So what he did is he lifted photos of good-looking guys like you and good-looking gals, and made fake profiles and put them all on Tinder. And when you swiped and picked on it and said, hey, I'm not real, but if you want to meet people like me, come to such and such. And people laughed. They got that they were in on the joke. And the place was a hit. Incredible. So there's always a solution.
When you, that's such a great story, because then, if you're using the axis, the brain, the axis of how it's rotating, you can start to triangulate different opportunities and marry that into kind of what your flow is. But because I think it's so important for kind of that backstory of where you were in those days where you didn't have money, it forced you to become solutions driven. Where's the, I don't want to say the balance, but where's that space where, like, okay, you literally don't have money. Are you working a job concurrently with pursuing your businesses to make sure that your survival is taken care of? Or are you like an on the street entrepreneur and like stressing your life away? Because that's very real. I experienced it, right? So I get it because I've been there and I know what that's like. So when I hear someone like you that just was able to catapult out of that at a certain stage, in the middle of all of it, what's really happening right there in terms of on the concrete?
Stress beyond belief.
Got it.
See all this gray hair? I'm only 17. No, I didn't know how to do stuff. So I made way more mistakes than you need to. That's why I try to ease people's journeys with these books. I had some sense of pride that I wasn't going to ask for help, and I didn't get any mentors forever. I didn't know how to raise capital. So, I did it the worst way possible. But each time you get further, and whenever you're thinking of giving up and you think like the dream is too far away, you kind of pause and look over your shoulder how far you've climbed, and you amaze yourself, right? And somebody asked me earlier in the week, well, is it luck? And I go, yeah, the harder you work, the luckier you'll get. I mean, I've had unbelievable, bizarre luck, but because I put myself out there. I mean, when I was a little startup company of less than 10 people, I suddenly get a phone call one day, this is mid-90s, from a guy doing a horrible Arkansas accent saying he's President Bill Clinton. Like, there's no way the man in chief, is calling little old Jay. Right. So I have to embarrass myself and get the president to convince me that he's the president. But what an opportunity. Next thing you know, I'm in the White House and I'm in charge of getting all the classrooms in America wired with the internet. And I did it without $1 of taxpayer money. So there's always a problem. And how did he come to see me? I was writing about it. I was posting, I was talking about these things. And somebody had handed it to one of his people, and it was something that he wanted to campaign on, bridge to the 21st century. And my life is like one of these weird movies where, all these major star characters just bump into it because you're just a force of nature that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And if you're ever bored, I did a commencement address for a university. You can just search my name and commencement address on YouTube. And what's interesting is when you're a keynote speaker for graduation, you're the only thing between you and 5,000 people who want to go party, right?
Get out of here. Absolutely.
If you're not Michael Jordan, like, dude, get off there. We want to go party. So I had to figure out how to win that audience over. And what I did is I talked about my friends from college. Didn't go to fancy school, went to state school, but every one of them is a household name that you know because they never stop against improbable odds. One gal that I went to school with, amazing. So this is UCLA. There are gorgeous Miss Universes, Miss California, seriously in the class, whatever. And this one gal in my dorm wanted to be an actress, but she looked normal. She wasn't, Heather Locklear was also in the dorms, not that. She was just a regular person. But
I just watched a movie of her the other night, by the way. So it's funny you bring that up. I kid you not.
First day in the dorms, the elevators open, and there she is in a bathing suit. I'm going like, I like college. But anyway, so this girl's going to go and be an actress against all that, okay? So she started working with voiceover people and learning and just really killing her craft. And I think her first year out of school, she got 1 day's work to be a squeaky shoe in Roger Rabbit, where she just goes squeak once. I mean, that's $300, and you believe you're going to make it. And she just didn't give up. And one day, she gets a call to do what's called an interstitial, little cartoon at the end of a show before the commercial to fill in that little blank, to be a little girl. And she reads the script. She goes, I really think I could do the boy's voice better. And they go, sure. Like, they didn't care. Okay. So for the past 30 years, she's been Bart Simpson.
Wow.
I'm making 20 mil a year.
Unbelievable.
Nancy Cartwright.
Unbelievable.
So every one of the people that I hang out with, it's unbelievable, but nothing was going to stop them. Now, was her life's goal to be a voice of an animated cartoon? No. She damn happy with it? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did I end up that my business did what I thought it would when I opened the doors? No. But you follow where it leads you.
That I'm so glad you bring that up, because when you opened up that loop right there, my first thought was, okay, people out there become emotionally attached or connected to that one thing that they're working on, and they might not see the door shift and the other pathway open up for them, so they hold on too long, and it cannibalizes what they might be up to, right? So for you, and through your velocity and with your actions, if something wasn't working, do you have to have the presence of mind to pivot or take what you were working on and make it better? Or to just like, hey, I'm not doing anything else with this thing? And so what was that process like for you? In 2020
hindsight, I always went for that void in my move. I always said, there's no competition over here. So I'm trying to do Hollywood special effects. I wasn't the only guy, right? And everybody was more experienced, whatever. But there was this new startup that was made up of Universal Studios, Pioneer in Japan, and I forget the third company. But anyway, they were coming out with a thing called a Laserdisc, big giant CD about this big. Interactive video was going to be the new thing. Yeah. Nobody's done one of those. Can you do it? I go, do you have a budget? They go, we've got a big budget. I'm your guy. So now you're writing that thing. Then CDs, then we got video on computer, then we get the web on top of the internet. Then, what we're doing now on Zoom, I was head of a company a decade ago called Uvu. That's the people that invented voiceover chat. Right. #1 app with teenagers around the world. Had the pandemic hit then, that would have been $1 billion company. Wow. So I like to go where there's no competition. It's the same amount of work and you got nobody working against you. And when it gets crowded, there's always something new. The world is constantly changing. And I didn't anticipate that in the beginning. I thought when my first company took off, I go, oh my God, I'm going to be making these computer games the rest of my life. Then all of a sudden the big guys got it. At one point I had 7 of the top 10 selling games in the US. Okay. That's back when the game market was really small. But then all of a sudden Microsoft opens a game division with hundreds of people in it, and this one and that one. I'm going like, they're making bets those games suck. They're not going to work, but they're spending millions and millions of dollars. They're buying the shelf space. Time to sell that company and move on.
Interesting. Okay, so you did not choose in that particular instance to compete. You said, okay, let me find my opportunity here to sell off. And then you went off to that void space and you started recreating something new in there.
So if I was guilty of anything, I always sold off early, you could say. But I've also been on the boards and argued with founders that, yes, for this 1 nanosecond, you're the center of the universe. Everybody's beating down your thing with different offers. Might be the time to sell, because tomorrow the focus could be somewhere else. I had these 2 kids I was mentoring. 30 days into founding their company, 30 days into getting funded, somebody offered them $100 million. It's the only time I raised my voice in my professional career. I'm like, the odds of getting more than that is fractionally fractional. And if you're as smart as you say you are, you now have $100 million, go do it again. I mean,
right.
And they didn't take it. By the next year, because the first person you educate in business is not the customer, it's your competition. So what happened was they had 100 copycats. It was like dandelions in summer. They were everywhere. So then they had to raise more money and more money. They're still in business. They've raised, I think, $60 million. They've now their equity's been whittled down to so small that if they sold for $1 billion, they wouldn't make as much as they would have made month 1.
Wow. So in hindsight, once again, they made the wrong choice, right? They would have been able to walk away.
Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Don't be a hog, right? My original eBay stock, I knew nothing about the stock market. I'm young. I'm not, hadn't run NASDAQ companies. But it went from, when we went public, it went from $15 to $215 in 2 weeks. And I asked all the grown-ups that know about this stuff, is this normal? And they go, no, we've never seen a company go that fast. So I sold every single share, walk away from the table a winner. By the end of the month, it was at $600 a share. Am I upset? No.
Go back to that concept real quick that you just said about educate your competition first.
Well, the first people, so you find a void.
Yeah.
The big guys are busy doing what they're already doing.
Right.
When I was running, when I first was brought in to change Sony, within a month of getting there, they wanted my 3-year plan. As if you're going to know exactly everything that's going to happen for the next 3 years. Those companies move like dinosaurs. It takes a lot of work. So if you suddenly go in a space and you do something that somebody else should have been doing, who do you think is going to notice it? Who's been watching that space? Every company that should be in that area. So right now I'm chairman of a company in a space that nobody was in, that I guarantee you by next year, everybody and their mother is going to have to be in. And that's actually part of the plan, because one of the big guys is going to say, it'll be quicker for us to overpay and buy this company than to start from scratch. When people stop watching television ads, I go, ooh, there's a lot of companies that live off of those ad dollars. If I could come up with a new ad unit, a new way to get to the customers. So I was CEO of a little startup. 18 months later, News Corp bought it for $200 million.
It's a fascinating perspective shift. It's making all the sense in the world now. Get out ahead, start it up, build it, and then wait for the big guys to come in and say, hey, it's easier for me just to write you the check for the most part. And then
let me give you the CEO perspective of a big company.
Please.
Most people haven't gotten to sit in that seat. So here's what they'll always say. I'm thinking about the shareholders. I'm thinking about the customers. I'm bullcrap, okay? CEOs don't get paid a lot of money at public companies. They really don't. They have huge incentive packages. Hundreds of millions of dollars in incentive packages. So if you move the stock from here to here, you get paid like a king. So what are you thinking about? What's your one motivation? Every quarter, every 16 weeks, how do I hit that magic number? Because they back up the Brinks truck to my house, okay? That's all they think about. So how do you cheat to make that happen? Well, stop spending and you'll have profits. So don't develop new products. Don't have R&D. Don't spend years coming up with something new. Now you have profits. When it's, oops, we've got nothing new to sell, no one gets in trouble for buying their future. Mm-hmm. Google owned the desktop. They owned advertising and search. They owned it. They were asleep at the wheel when the iPhone came out. Mm. Go, uh-oh, if everybody starts doing everything on the phone, we're out of business. So they bought Android.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. They bought their way again and again to stay in business. Microsoft does the same thing. So why not go in these spaces and start a business with who's going to acquire it in mind? I have a whole chapter beyond the truths at the end because most people don't understand deal structure. And I want to give, can't tell every deal structure that you're on, but to give people a way of thinking about it. Even if you just have a job, even if you're just doing gig work, there's a better way to structure it than you pay me this and I'll do that. If you believe that you can make that person's business better and make more money, why not put in the contract a stretch goal? If we hit this metric, if you sell $1 million worth of stuff, I get $100,000 bonus. If I sell $1 million, I'd gladly give you $100,000. Well, then do it. I did this when I was at a public company, mid-level guy. Company was having a horrible year. CFO, CEO, one of them, they could look at each other. One of them was going to get fired by the board. So they're like, we got to do more. We got to hit it. I mean, they don't know anything other than say you got to do, and they've got no plans. So I went to the CFO and I said, Tony, if we hit the stretch goal, if we do more than what we're saying, we'll do it. Will you double everybody in my division's salaries? He goes, sure. So I put a picture of Tony on my wall in my office, one of those charity thermometers that you fill in the red stripes. And each week, my staff meeting wasn't, what can we do? How's it going? How are we moving that up? End of the year, every one of my people made twice as much.
Wow.
And the rest of the company hated our guts.
So, man, I'm just thinking, because I'm the entrepreneur, let's just say, and I know there's a lot of us out there where they're like, okay, I love what Jay just said. I'm looking for that void. I'm trying to find that space to go to. Is there a formula?
Three problems a day for 30 days.
Got it.
So at the end of your month, you have 90 ideas. Sort them on two axes. One is TAM, total addressable market. When I taught this at universities, there's always some kid that goes, oh, I'm going to make a business delivering food to the dorms. Really? Your total market is 200 people. Take the same energy to do a business that's, Uber Eats. Which are you going to focus on? So that's one axis. So you want something that there's a big enough market.
Upside, right? Okay.
Right.
Makes sense.
The other axis is, what are you passionate about? I once had a guy, I can't make up my life, came into my office. He had a brilliant idea that was going to make a fortune. Short version is, he has a contract, he makes bullets for the US Army. So the government's paying for all his factories, all his supplies, all his stuff, and they're only buying this much. He could run extra shifts at night and it cost him nothing. So he could flood the market with cheap bullets. He's going to make a fortune or a killing. And I'm like, how do I get this guy out of my office without getting shot? I don't want to make money by making more bullets out there. Right? There's do not see a problem here.
Sure.
So Tom Bilyeu, who wrote the foreword to Future Proofing You, he had a software company. They were bored. They were making money. They don't like it. But he had obese relatives. And he wanted to do something. And he realized that all those protein bars were basically candy bars called health bars. Yeah. They were all filled with corn syrup. So even though there were 1,600 bars in the market, there was none that was healthy. So they came up with Quest Bar. And a couple of years later, they sold it for $1 billion. So that passion gets you through the tough things.
Sure.
Everybody can sell shoes. And a shoe is a shoe. I'm not a shoe guy. There's white ones, there's blue ones. Who gives a darn? But when Tom Shoes says, when you buy their product, somebody that's never owned a pair of shoes gets a pair, suddenly that purchase has meaning. Today's customers want to buy from companies that share their values. We need to move to sustainable capitalism. Normal capitalism is broken. So if you can bring that to whatever you're doing in any field, you'll get farther. And you'll attract people of a better caliber that want to make stuff happen.
Absolutely. I want to be mindful of your time too, but I have another question because I took a note about one of your skill sets that you mentioned about bringing things to market. Like you just said, that, and I know one word that I honed in on was when you said communication, right? And the ability to be able to communicate outwardly. And I almost hear when you talk about what your approach was, it's almost like shameless self-promotion, just getting yourself out there and projecting it in a way where, you were just streamlined in that process. So what is kind of rounding off that skill of bringing something to market successfully? I know we've talked about a lot of different pieces of this puzzle so far, but I know that, and then somebody can jump in and say, oh, it's sales, it's marketing, it's this, it's that. So can you shed some light a little bit more on that skill set? Because I think that would, beautifully kind of help us put a nice bow on top of this whole thing.
Sure. So when my first book, Disrupt You, hit #1 down in Australia, and I went down and toured all over afterwards. Great people, lovely country, but they have an expression there: nobody wants to be the tallest poppy. Don't stand out. So even trying to get like a successful billionaire down there to like speak at a business conference, no, I don't want any to, like, that doesn't work with the startup, right? If the competition is spending hundreds of millions of dollars, you got to find every which way you can to get noticed. You got to find them. And my secret, I'll give you 2 secrets for people to stay this far into it. And by the way, there's free workbooks on either of my books on my website, jsamit.com. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to help you. Price of a Frappuccino, change your life. So here's 2 secrets that I developed over the years. One, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Manny. Why do you hire a PR firm?
To get exposure, to get your name out there.
Wrong.
Okay, let me take another stab at it. To end up with customers.
Yeah, but that's still wrong. I'm going to go wrong to whatever you come up with.
Let's go deeper. Underlying motive, right? Prestige, status, accolade,
nope.
feeling significant.
Nope.
School me, man. Let's go to the J. Samit school for a second.
Here's why I hire a PR firm. Any market you're going after, let's pretend you're going after college students as your market, okay? And you're selling something. There's somebody else that's also going after that market that's not a competitor. So let's say Microsoft has the student version of their Office and a bundle or whatever. And they're going to spend a fortune going after that market, but they don't have a new idea. So if you have a new idea that includes your product, then you get what's called OPM, other people's money. So when I had to go up against iTunes with my music startup, and I didn't have $100 million that they were spending a year on advertising, I said, okay, who else has a problem? McDonald's has a problem. Their sales are down because of Supersize Me. So if I figure out a solution that helps me, it helps them. So get a free track with each Big Mac free track. They spent $60 million advertising it. To get the free track, you have to come to my store. First week, I got 20 million paying customers. How do you get to the CMO of McDonald's, okay, before you're some big name? Real easy. Figure out their PR firm, hire that PR firm for your company. You tell them what you're doing. They go, wow, you know what? We have a client McDonald's that would go great with, because the PR person spends all their time with the CMO. Next thing you know, 48 hours, you're in front of them. The PR agent looks like a genius. The CMO loves you. He looks like a genius with a new idea. And you look like a genius with somebody who spent $60 million to launch your business with no equity. So that's
how, the game. That's you're playing chess. You just played chess right there. You're making your moves out ahead of you, right? You're setting the table.
I would always hire the PR firm that would get me to who I had an idea for.
That's a brilliant strategy. I love it. And so when you got to that point, did you plant that seed? Or did it sort of happen naturally because you were just talking about that's what you were wanting to do? Or were you like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we were able to get on the Big Mac and do the track thing?
I'd love to say that I had the skillful finesse to make them think it was their idea. No, I was aggressive and determined and came in with the answers of why this works.
Got it.
Sometimes you get it across, sometimes you don't. I had this killer idea for Pepsi, and it was to give digital rewards, to buy more Pepsi points type thing. And they just didn't get it. And next thing you know, My Coke Rewards was born, right? There's always somebody else to go to. The second I did that thing with McDonald's, we copied that again with dozens and dozens of non-competing products. Test drive a car, get a free album. Buy clothes at American Eagle, get a free album. We put fake earbuds and a Walkman on every mannequin in every store window. I mean, endless, without spending a dime.
So that kind of debunks that whole thing about you need money, you got to have these and all these other blockers, right?
Came from welfare and made $1 million with zero capital.
Right. Yeah,
zero.
Incredible story. 12 truths for creating opportunity, maximizing wealth, and controlling your destiny in an uncertain world. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So because this is where you're at now, two more final questions for you, Jay, and I genuinely appreciate your time and what you've contributed here. It's been phenomenal. What do you still look to accomplish? I mean, it's like, you check all the boxes, you got the
Um,
books out, you're helping people. What still fires you
so,
up?
so I didn't want to run another company.
Okay.
Okay. Don't need the money, don't need the aggravation.
Yeah, sure.
Trying to pay it forward and help people. But somebody came to me with an idea that I felt morally obligated to say yes. So now I'm chairman of Greenfield Robotics. And here's the pitch that got me, hook, line, and sinker. Somebody 100 years ago thought it was a really smart way to grow food was to put as much poison as you can to kill every weed and every insect, but just not enough to kill us. Well, Roundup causes cancer. What a shock. Paraquat causes stuff. I mean, go on and on. Why do we poison? Why do we put poison on food? Well, to get rid of these weeds. So what if instead of poisoning, you had a different solution? And an engineer who had worked for me 20 years ago at Sony came up with a little robot that goes up and down the rows. Think of cornfield, soy, milo, and just chops off the weeds. Now, let me tell you what that does. Farmers till the soil to get rid of weeds. That is the single largest source of carbon released in the atmosphere, greenhouse gases. 25% of all of it comes from farming. So now the planet doesn't overheat. Number two, you're not putting poison in our food. So healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. Number three, the runoff of extra chemicals don't go down the rivers and kill all the fish in the Gulf of Mexico and the Mississippi. So you help the planet, you help people, and because the farmers don't have to buy all these pesticides and herbicides, they make 40% more per acre. In 2020, not a single farm in the US made a profit. By the way, farming goes out of business, we all die. So helps the farmer, helps the consumer, gets us eating healthy. How am I not morally obligated to help that company get to the next level?
Sure. And when they invite you to be chairman, you are in an advisory role and you're looking over them and saying, hey, I'm your mentor, but you also have active participation.
Oh, I'm rolling up the sleeves and,
yeah.
If you need to shovel, I'm shoveling. I mean, it's whatever it takes.
Incredible.
And it's amazing the progress. I mean, we're out in the fields in Kansas. It's based out of Kansas. And we're changing lives and we're changing the world.
Sure.
A lot of countries have a shortage of labor to actually work the fields.
What do you love most about everything that you do? Aside from helping people. And I get that because that's the obvious answer. But let's just say getting your face kicked in for 20, 30 years in business, because that's what's happening, right? It just taking blow after blow. What did you love in the whole process that kept you going?
I love that I could take a half of an idea, because I've never had a whole idea in my life. I could take a half of an idea and it would happen. Like, I'll give you one that just popped in my mind, because I remember sitting next to one of my employees and saying, cherish this moment. This is as good as it gets. In launching that music store, again, McDonald's was one avenue. I was thinking who else was in trouble, and United Airlines was in bankruptcy. They needed positive PR. They were going to come out of bankruptcy. So what does my digital music store have to do with an airline? So I connect the dots. Well, they're going out. A lot of people have United miles. It's about 9 billion of them, and they're going to be worthless. So I'll use that as a currency. You can use your frequent flyer miles to buy your favorite music and albums, okay? But to get the word out, I pitched United, what if we held a concert in the sky? Now, Richard Branson had wanted to do this 10 years ago before, but he was banned by the FCC for a whole bunch of reasons. And I kept that, I kept that in the back of my mind. So I pitched that to United, and they go, yeah, but how would we do it? Don't worry. So fast forward, we're sitting there, 35,000 feet, plane is filled with nothing but journalists. Sheryl Crow does a whole concert from Chicago to LA. By the time the plane lands, the footage has been edited, goes to everybody to go on the evening news. And that's how we launched the music store. It was beautiful. And like the idea that you can come up with any wacky thing and see what happens, or come up with that half idea and watch people take it further than your imagination and refine it and make it grow into something. It's amazing. And I still other than when I'm in front of a mirror, think I'm that 20-something-year-old still doing my first startup.
Incredible.
I love the empty room stage. No one would ever get me to take a job to be CEO of a company of, get us 2% growth. Like, shoot me. Where's the fun in that? The fun is to do something nobody's done before. Because I can tell you that anybody else would have done it better, but I was lucky enough to do it first.
Sure. Wow. Wow, that's profound. That's profound. So you said something right there, which is the perfect segue to my last question, which is, obviously the title of the show is always on the grow. So the question back to you is, what does that mean to you? What does it mean for you to bring it home in the fashion of, what's always on the grow? What does that mean?
So with Disrupt You and teaching people about entrepreneurship, I really wrote it with a U.S. focus and U.S. blinders. All right. What came out of that is, now that's in all these languages around the world, I'm traveling around the world working with governments of how to make their policies and laws and systems more focused on entrepreneurs, because everybody's got problems. And to me, that's very exciting. January, a year ago before the lockdown, I was in 4 continents, 12 countries. That was my typical month, on the road. Last place I was Lithuania. I mean, spoke at every university there, the head of the government, it was a big deal for them. But the impact that I now see from responses in social media and inbound just drives me to work harder. I mean, because you just get emails of these books are changing people's lives. And,
sure.
I've been blessed, and I will try to pay it forward with whatever time I have left.
Amazing. Well, future-proofing you, 12 truths for creating opportunity. Again, maximizing wealth and controlling your destiny in that uncertain world. So where can, that's it right there. Yep. Where can everybody go find the book? Where else can they find some more great stuff about you? I mean, I know
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you can get it if my voice doesn't annoy you. There's the Audible version. There is the Kindle version.
Did you read the whole Did you read the whole audio version yourself? Did you do that?
Oh yeah.
Good for you. Good
Both
for
books.
You.
Not
Good.
Easy. You can find me at jsamit.com. Again, there's free workbooks that you can download, JAYSAMIT. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you want. I'm easy to get to. Love to hear from people and love to hear people's success stories, because that's all that I'm doing in these books, is communicating what other people have done that are no different than anybody listening.
Right. And I can tell you right now, just from this, hour phone call here, or I should say Zoom call, right? Because now it's so automatic that I think you're on a phone. But we've future-proofed some lives today. So that is the beautiful thing. I know it's worked for me. It's happening as we speak in real time. So Jay, right there, my friend, pounder, give her a high five type of thing. Appreciate your time. Thanks for all you do. And thanks for making the big old difference that you are continuing to make. And I'm just, now it's a stand by and let's see what else this magnificent man can create to put together and, drastically change the future of our world and as in terms of the direction that is trending. So you're the best, and look forward to seeing you on the other side, my man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.